A horror romantic comedy. Let's talk My Demon Lover. Hello fellow followers and welcome to FanZcene. Today on Let's Talk I will be talking to you about the 1987 sort of cult classic My Demon Lover, starring Scott Valentine as Kaz and Michelle Little as Denny. This movie is, I think, a little ahead of its time. It was one of the few movies in the 80s that tried to blend horror, comedy, and romance into one movie. And I do think it succeeds at parts and falters in some. But overall, I enjoyed this movie. And if you're a fan of these like type of 80s cult classic, weird type movies like this, you probably would be a fan of them too. But if you're not, maybe after I'm done talking to you, you will be a fan and maybe want to check it out. But I do have to warn you, this movie is a little bit hard to find, but it is findable. So let's get ready and let's talk. The movie starts with introducing us to Michelle Little's character, Denny. She's basically your typical everyday romantic comedy lead woman. You know, she's this cute, quirky woman who just can never seem to find love in the big city. And next we're introduced to her sassy best friend, who, this is where the movie starts to blend together, is an occult shop owner and who is a bit psychic. And so we're introduced to these two and their friendship, and we're also introduced to this other character who's just like, his name is Charles. He's a bit of a nerdy character. He's always trying to hit on these women, and Denny sort of befriends him and is nice to him. So he's sort of there in the background here and there from time to time, always trying to get with her. But that's just like your normal setup in these type of movies. Next, we're introduced to Scott Valentine's Kaz. He is a homeless musician, and we're introduced to him on this train where he's playing the saxophone, and he's a bit of annoying in everything and annoying people. And he notices this woman sitting there, and he starts checking her out, and gets a little weird. And then all of a sudden, we notice something happens to him. His teeth starts to get sharp and his eyes turn red. Hence, that starts the horror stuff. So there's that. And then there's like this cut to this woman outside of the train station. And it looks like something bad may have happened to her. And so there we get another hint of the horror aspect as well. And then next, as the movie goes along, we catch back up with Denny, and she's at this health food restaurant, and she's sitting outside, and then into the garbage next to her out pops Kaz, and this is the first meeting of the two, and he starts aggravating her over her food because he wants it, and she laments and gives it to him, and he takes a bite of it, and he starts spitting it out all everywhere because it's this nasty tasting food to him. And she tells him that he wasn't eating meat, he was eating a fruit burger, and he starts to get disgusted by this, and he starts aggravating over it about how she could eat a fruit burger, and he starts following her and everything, and as she's walking away, and they start having this banter and arguing back and forth. You can start to see the chemistry between the two. He follows her to her house, and they're still bantering, and he starts to sort of get turned on again by her, and we notice a little more weirdness happen to him, and he takes off running, and she's a little bit weirded out by this, and it fades to night, and we see this woman walking down the street next that's close to Denny's house, and we see a man who's wearing a similar looking jacket to Kaz come out of the side of the building, and he's weird looking, and he runs after the girl, and you hear scream. Then we find out there is a mangler in the city, a serial killer attacking young women, and we also find out that Denny's best friend, the sassy best friend who's a psychic, sister, is in the hospital as she was attacked by this, and she is there with the police trying to get information out of her sister, and as I said, she's psychic. As her sister starts to describe it, she sees it in her head, and she sees like this demon looking creature, and she tells the main police officer there, and he does not believe her because it's a demon and they don't want to believe that. So then we have that going on. Next off, we're back to Denny. And her ex-boyfriend has come back to her house and is starting to threaten her, and then Cass shows back up and runs him off, after she like sort of faints from him because he's still sort of in this creepy phase, and so he takes her up to her apartment, and when she wakes up, we see him, and he's back to normal, and and then she's kind of confused with everything, and then you know she offers him Kaz to stay in her apartment and get him so he can sleep and everything, and as a repayment for saving her and everything, and he agrees to it, and then he starts to get turned on yet again by her because he sees her getting ready for bed, and so he jumps out the window and leaves. Uh, and also he meets up with this man that's on the street who's sort of a mystic type man who can see that there's something wrong with Kaz, and so him and Kaz look into his past to see what's wrong with him. And so we get the flashback to when Kaz was a young man and he was at this young girl's house, and they started making out, and her grandmother or mother shows up, who's a gypsy, and places a curse on him and basically gives him a major case of blue, you know, and the guy tells him he's Pozaski, which is a term for he's sort of possessed, that this gypsy woman put the demon in him, and anytime he gets aroused by a woman, the demon comes out. So there's that, and he starts to believe that he maybe is the Mangler because of the way he turns and everything into like this demon creature every time he gets aroused, and so he tries to keep that from Denny, and they start hitting it off, and they start building their relationship. We get the whole 80s montage of the romantic couple coming together and falling in love and everything as well too. And then they're at a bar one night, and he tries to tell her that he believes that he might be the Mangler, and that when he gets when he gets like all worked up, everything, he turns into his demon and everything, and she doesn't believe him. And her best friend and Charles, the nerd guy from the beginning, are in the bar, and they show up, they sit by him, and he's looking at her Denny's best friend, and looking at her, let's say, bosom area, and he starts to get the teeth and everything again, and she sees it, and she remembers seeing the demon in her sister thing, so she thinks it's him too. And then Denny and him, Denny notices this and takes him and takes her back to his place, and then so the gears are turning in Denny's best friend's head, and like I said, she starts to think that he might be the Mangler as well, and she wants to get revenge for her sister. But meanwhile, back at Denny's place, he's trying to convince her that he thinks he might be dangerous, and that's what happens, and she still doesn't quite really believe him about what he can turn into, so she kind of dares him into getting riled up to prove it to her, and so he does. And man, some of the weird transformations they have some really good old school special effects in this, and when he pops off and he turns into this demon monster guy, and all these different forms and everything that happens, and like there's this really gross scene where she like pushes in on him, and it's like all this stuff comes out, and he pops, and he turns he turns back to normal, and she sees, but she tells him that that he couldn't be the Mangler because she got him all worked up and everything, and he didn't hurt her, and he didn't go anywhere. So she doesn't believe that he could be the Mangler. But meanwhile, her best friend thinks he does. So she goes back to her occult shop and gets this knife off that she has off the wall, made of flint, that can kill a demon. She calls her friend away, and she has to try to get her away from the apartment, because she's going to go there with Charles to kill Kaz. But on her way out, Charles ends up kidnapping Denny, and we notice that Charles' hand is also a demon hand. So this is where I think you can pretty much safely assume that Charles is actually the Mangler. And so he takes her, and meanwhile upstairs, Denny's best friend's trying to kill Kaz, and they're fighting, and Kaz goes out the window, and he sees that Charles is kidnapping Denny, so he jumps out the window, and he jumps out onto the car, and so he's hanging on the car, Denny's best friend's hanging on the car, Charles is driving the car, and Denny's in the car, and it's like this crazy car chase all over the place, and then it just so happens in the middle of New York City, there's this freaky looking castle. So basically, the evil guy kidnaps the damsel and takes her to the castle, and so all the police show up, and Denny and Kaz is there, and Denny's best friend's there, and earlier when they were fighting, I forgot to tell you, when Kaz and her best friend was fighting, he sort of got arousal too, and he sort of was like had a demon face and wings. And when they get there, and because as Charles is taking Denny up to the top of the castle, she tells Kaz, "Go up there and save her. I seen that you had wings before." And he's like, "Well, I can't just turn it off and on. I'm not like that." And she goes, "What do you need?" And he's like, he explains to her what she needs. She goes, "Oh, that? Well, you just hit the jackpot." And so she starts making out with him and everything, and to get him roused up and turn him into a demon. And it's like this weird thing, because Denny's up there running around from demon, and she sees it down there, and she's getting jealous and mad. It's just, like I said, this movie is weird. It's funny. It's like all these blends of weird stuff. I like it. So he gets all riled up and he turns into this demon, and it's pretty cool, and he gets wings and he flies up to the castle, and he's trying to save her, but she doesn't want to be saved because now she's mad at him for making out with her best friend and everything to get the way he was there. But then they start fighting, and they go chase him to the rooftops of the castle, and then it's revealed, that Charles, he turns into this giant demon monster with electrical powers, with powers that start shooting electricity at him and everything. And Kaz is, he starts turning back to normal, and he can't get back to, to be to the thing. And they try, but it doesn't work. And then finally, they defeat him. He blows up, and Kaz and them save the girl, and also, I forgot to tell you earlier as well too, the man on the street that told Kaz that he's a Pozotsky, he's Pozotz is what they called it. He told him that whenever he has to do an act of self-righteousness, and the demon will leave him and it will jump to the person closest to him. So after this is all done, and they defeat the bad guy, and he saves the girl and everything, he's afraid that maybe it went into her, but it didn't go into her. When he said it goes into a close person, he literally meant the person that was closest to him, which so happened to be the psychic or the mystic guy on the streets, and it jumps into him, and you see him sort of get horns and everything, and he chases this cop away, and so that's how the movie ends. The couple walks away happily ever after. Hope I did my best to explain this to you and didn't mess it up too much. I tried to get all the good points that I could in there, but I think this is a pretty good movie, and if you've never seen this movie, I'd say check it out, and if you don't want to, that's fine. It's decent. I do think it's a little bit ahead of time. Could it have been better? Yeah, I mean, it was the 80s. It didn't have some of the stuff we have now, but sometimes that's for the better. But, so there it is. Let's talk My Demon Lover. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it below. Hit that notification bell so you get notifications when I drop new videos. I thank you guys for watching. I'm not the best, but I try. Have a great day, and Godspeed.